everyone, and welcome to the Uncorked Corner podcast. We are excited to be here today with our friends at Idletyme up in Vermont. We have Claudia and Will here. I'm also here with my co-host, Nick, as you guys know. We'll get started by having you both introduce yourselves. I know you want to go one at a time, so whoever wants to kick us off.
Hi, I'm Will Gilson. I'm the brewmaster here at Idletyme. We've been going since 2015 in a small 8.5 barrel brew house. We only sell in Vermont. We offer draft cans, bottles, growlers, things like that. We've got a big beer garden, and we're excited to chat with you guys and tell you a little bit more about what we do.
I'm Claudia. I am the marketing manager and event coordinator here at Idletyme. I've been here for a little over a year and a half, and I'm loving every minute of it.
And for anyone listening right now, just to let you know, they are live in the brew pub. So if you hear any background noise, that is perfectly okay. They're enjoying it, and glad we get to have some people there enjoying the beer.
We're just wishing we were in the environment with you guys. So
I know, to kick into it, Bianca and I actually got a chance to visit Idletyme in person a few months ago, and we got to check out the very room they're in now, the brew pub area, the old brew pub. It was my favorite room. I loved it. Definitely had an old time kind of cozy pub feel, and we really enjoyed visiting. You also have sort of a chic, modern restaurant feel with a really cool decor, awesome outdoor bar and outdoor seating and everything. So it's definitely worth a visit next time you are in Stowe or in the Vermont area. It's worth a drive.
I think Bianca had fun. She is smiling still, so she must have had fun when she came.
We had a lot of fun. We loved trying all the different beers you have, and the food was incredible. We don't need to get all into that, but we absolutely loved everything that we had. And we were there on a slightly chilly day, but it was still really nice sitting outside because you guys have those space heaters. We didn't really have that indoor experience, but I loved the decor and everything. As Nick said, it was just such a great place.
And you got to meet Claudia.
Yeah, we did.
Great time.
The best tour guide we've had.
Oh, good.
Thanks.
And I give tours too, so you've got a double tour guide here.
Awesome.
So what we do here in house is, we do brew tours by appointment or chance, and I've had people that have traveled all over the world, and I had some guys that had just been in Europe and had been in Duval a week before and over in Belgium, and they said that was the best brew tour we've ever had. So kudos to us for setting it up. But what we do is we have it set up with a series of pictures on my iPad, and we just go through it on Keynote so you can kind of understand the process. People brew beer all over the world. We do it a little bit differently. And our neighbors, some great breweries here in town, they do it their own way as well. And that's one of the reasons why the beer tastes the way it does. It's not only the brewer or the chef, it's the water and the ingredients and how we mix it together. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yep, you're definitely in a great spot for craft beverages in general with beer, cider. We got to try a bunch of them obviously while we were there and took some home, but definitely everyone has something to write home about, and definitely worth visiting if you're big into craft beer, food in general. So what are some outside of the brewery, just for anyone visiting Stowe, obviously, what is your favorite things to do there? What can people experience in the area?
I've been a brewer for many years, and I've kind of specialized in ski towns. I was a ski bum in Utah when I got my first job in downtown Salt Lake. I lived up in the mountains up in Alta, and then I was making beer there as a hobby, and it became a career. Next, I was in Jackson Hole, so I was obviously skiing and mountain biking and fishing and doing all those things that you can do in Jackson Hole.
In Stowe, personally, my ultimate favorite thing to do, Trap Family Lodge. I do snowboard and ski, and I love going to the mountain. But I've gotten really into cross-country skiing in the last couple of years, and there's some really great trails here in Stowe. And one of my favorites is the Trap Family Lodge, because you can actually ski down to the beer hall. The only downside is it's an uphill journey back to this. So you got to be really ready for that, mentally prepared. But skiing to the beer hall is such a cool experience. And that's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, just if we're going to blow the horn of our neighbors, very close by is our friends at the Alchemist. And over there in the golf course every once in a while they drive around with a groomer there, so I can walk across the street with my dog and skate ski on those free trails right there that are right in town. So we've got the bike path out back. We've got, major ski area in Stowe right up the road. That's really starting to get going with the fresh snow that we've had. And I'm big on Nordic skiing. We ski a lot of, scare ourselves on skinny skis.
Stowe Mountain Resort, they have a really fabulous ice rink, and it's open to the public, so you don't have to be at the resort. And I believe it's free for everybody, and it's
free.
really cute. It's got all the lights and.
They play music and they
Yeah.
Zamboni it, and it's small, but they groom it, and you can rent skates there if you don't have your own skates. So that's the insider tip: bring your own skates. Sit on the comfy couch and go skating. We've done it as locals on New Year's Eve. We've done it different times. So just before Christmas, we did have some good pond skating, but we've had too much snow since. So we're skiing. Put the skates
and Nick and I love skiing and snowboarding, but we don't do it nearly as much as we'd like to. And it certainly does not look like it does in Vermont. So I feel like we don't get the same experience. We'll definitely have to come back. And so for us, when we go on vacation, we were there in the fall, so it wasn't really that season yet, but we took full advantage of all of the breweries, all of the places to eat. Stowe is a great area. I feel like there were so many different neighborhoods around that we could really pop around and visit so many places. And as Nick said, we brought more than we probably needed home. So you guys were almost sold out when we were there. We couldn't bring much home at the time, but we got to try a lot there. So that was a big plus.
Yeah, because we're small, we sell out quite often. With just with a little less traveling right now, we're holding on to our beer a little bit longer. But yeah, at times we'll package it, and before we get to package again in like a month's time, we'll run out. So it definitely happens.
Do you want to get into talking a little bit about the beers?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the 10 beers we have on tap, or do you want to talk about specific beers? It's really up to you.
Yeah. So what I always like to do is talk about maybe the flagship stuff, the stuff that's always on rotation that you guys have going, and then also get into anything that's seasonal or special or limited edition that you have going right now, or just anything that's upcoming that you're really excited about. I know you were experimenting with some, I think they were barrel-aged vanilla porters last time we were there. You were getting those going. I know I saw those on the website, so maybe we can talk a bit about those. I know I'm excited to hear about them.
Yeah, so we do have, I can talk about that first because you brought it up, and then we can jump into the main lineup. But actually what we have is I didn't have the porter at the time. What I have in the barrels when the Imperial Stout came out, I put in some Dunkel Lager, which is just a slightly dark lager that's in there. And we're really interested to see how the little bit of residual, not only oakiness, but from the Imperial Stout being in there, will make that, it's going to be, I think we're going to get a slightly oaky sort of Schwarzbier out of it. And it was one of those things that we had some extra beer, didn't all fit in the tank, and we were going to compost it or use it in the barrel. And it's always a little bit of a crapshoot when you use a barrel for a second time. That's why we quite often use the first usage barrels. They can get some flavors that you're not as big a fan of. Yes, we actually did the Dunkel that time. And then for specialty beers that we put into 22-ounce bottles. And right now we've been getting our bottles from Europe because the American bottles have just been really poor quality. They've engineered them so much to make them lightweight that they've lost durability and have, if you into the beer blogs or anything like that, Sierra Nevada on the East Coast had a huge coast-wide recall of glass. So that's one of the reasons cans have become so popular. If you have a bottle on a shelf, it breaks, it's shrapnel, it's dangerous. If you have a can, it's just kind of fountaining and you've lost your beer and you better drink it pretty quick because it's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get into the 10 beers that are on tap. So I mentioned that I've been brewing for a number of years before Claudia nudged me out here. I was in North Conway for 12 years, also a ski town. When the skiing isn't as good, we go cross-country skiing and scare ourselves on skinny skis. And when the powder comes, we try to head to the mountains. So being right here, we got a chance to do both of those things. But in all my years of brewing, I've never worked on a brewing system as nice as what we have here. We've got a state-of-the-art German engineered brewing system that was shipped over to us and installed in the pub. And it's 10 hectoliters, and it does anything and everything. It's really amazing how efficient it is. And really important and close to my heart is, on my mom's side is German, is our German beers taste traditional. When the German comes in and they try our beers, they don't give you big compliments. They're not jumping up and down. They just say quietly, you could sell this beer in Germany. So with that compliment, I mean, that makes me feel really happy. And we've got a number of lagers, so I'll just bang them out right now. We've got the Hellisbrook lager, which is a classic Hellas golden lager, very quaffable. It's what you see them in beer gardens in Munich drinking by the liter. We drink them in our beer garden too, but we go by pint. That's kind of the size that we do. The dry hopped lager that's on is the Pilsner. Traditional German hops in there, but kind of hopped more like we hop our IPAs and our pale ales. There's a popular name of a Vermont, like the Vermont Pale Ale. It's become a style, and Vermont brewers are kind of protective of that. But what we do, here's the secret, if you're trying to mimic us, we put a ton of hops in it. That's why, you know, you're tasting that. That's why my Zog's Pale Ale tastes in the direction of Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale, but it's a lot bigger. And back in the 90s when I first started brewing in 95 professionally, we would make a beer like a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. That was the classic style. It was hoppy. It was a nice firm bitterness. It was a fairly light mouthfeel. It was a nice beer. The Pale Ales of today, many people will come in and say, if you call that an IPA, you'll sell. And for some, it is a session IPA because it's lower alcohol. It's big on the hops. And you've really seen in national competition the definition of what a pale ale is and what a session IPA really overlap in terms of alcohol content, in terms of aroma, bitterness, all sorts of things like that. So for us, it's still a pale ale. It's just big and juicy, and we love it. How's that for the lagers? Is that enough of the lagers there?
Yeah, good.
And you guys have those, what do you call them, brewskis?
Yeah, so we've
They're
got
the
like
best.
well, we started with a ski, right? Because it was like shaped as a ski and it was 6 beers, and we still do that. But snowboarding is really big. We have to say, give kudos to all the snowboard companies that are in and around Vermont. They get people down the hill too. We have it's a snowboard, basically 10 4-ounce, 5-ounce samples of beer. So all 10 at one time, which is pretty cool. And people share them, and hopefully they're being careful in this day and age, but we're sharing them.
There are definitely some
Trying them all.
that we've had of the setup wise. It was great. And for anyone who didn't see it, we shared a photo of it. So we'll share more. We took lots, but they were all so great, and the food was just incredible. And I just keep thinking about it. So
it's like the beer starts in fresh ingredients in terms of keeping your ingredients constant, having the same people prepping in the back, keeping it real similar with the recipes, finding a recipe you like and making it the same. When we do the same thing in the brewery, when I do have an assistant, I really want to train them to be able to make the beer just like I do, that it tastes just the same. And that's really just to do things my way, not only using the ingredients, but moving the beer through the stages the same way that I do. And we try to do that in the kitchen and keep our eyes on things. And we had a pretty busy summer outside because everybody wanted to be outside. We had very little rain, so the bird hunting was fantastic in the fall, but it was a great season out there. And you kind of are asking about beers, so I can keep going through the different beers. We generally have 3 different yeasts in the house, and that makes our beer taste different. Sometimes you'll go into a brew pub and all their beers will taste similar, You may love all their beers, you may hate all their beers, but sometimes that element that you're tasting may be the yeast character. The more hops we throw in, the more bitterness we're going to put in, the more you're going to cover that yeast character. But if you have a beer that isn't bittered as much or isn't hopped as much, as you get in higher alcohol, you're really going to taste that beer. So say, for example, I make a Bavarian wheat beer the whole year long. You can come in generally anytime and get that wheat beer. And people say it's one of the best ones around. So thank you for that. But if you don't like the flavor of that wheat beer, you don't like that banana ester, clovey, bubblegum sort of direction of Belgian-y type yeast, even though it's blown across Europe, then you're not going to like the Weiss beer. So by putting that yeast in the Weiss beer and in our Danube, our blueberry wheat beer, they have a certain taste. Then if we ferment them with a lager yeast or ale yeast. So really that's the other yeast. And then the third yeast is a hard working ale yeast we use, and that's in our Pinkett Pale, which is a beer first with grapefruit juice in it.
It's my favorite of all time. I loved it before I worked here, and I will continue to love it long after.
Boys, girls, young and old, people love the Pinkett Pale. It has a little bit more of a profile. I wouldn't say like a cocktail, but when hops are fruity and you have a fruity IPA or any of those beers, it has a certain sort of nose to it. There's a certain dryness and a certain fruitiness that comes through with the Pinkett Pale, which we actually feed to the yeast halfway through fermentation. So we still don't blow all the aroma out, but it's going to eat up those sugars. So it's hopefully not cloying in the mouthfeel. The next one is our classic Zog's Pale Ale. It's named after a mountain bike trail that's right down the road. We've got world-class mountain biking here in Stowe and other places in Vermont. Had a couple in today. They were fat biking on those trails, on the Zog Trail today. They didn't have studs on their mountain bike, but they had a great time on it. And might have been easier than it is in the summer because it's a pretty rooty trail. So that's the Zog's Pale Ale. And then we actually have 2 double IPAs right now. We've got our Idletyme double IPA, 8%, big and juicy, fairly dry in the body, but mostly dry hopped with Simcoe. So it has a certain amount of fruitiness in the aroma and a firm bitterness. And then the Double Time, in those first years that we were open, we couldn't get enough Simcoe to make as many batches of Idletyme that we wanted. So instead of, say, bastardized, change the recipe of the Idletyme, we said, okay, we're only going to make 5 batches of Idletyme for the rest of the year. Let's make a second double IPA and be able to experiment it. So that one's seen a lot more changes. It's bigger, it's dank. It's what some people would call more of a West Coast IPA. It's 8%. It's made in the Vermont style in terms of the amount of hops that we put in is very similar to the Double Time. It's just different varietals, a blend of different varietals, and it's a little skunky. It's people like it. Skunky in a good way, not skunky in a Dutch way. Vanilla Porter, getting into the dark beers, the Vanilla Porter is on. Really try to balance that beer so that the body is fairly dry without being too dry, but then putting in real vanilla beans. So you've got this wonderful aroma of vanilla beans that by using the real beans, it's hopefully very, really well-rounded. And people dig that. That's one of the ones that we just did a really short canning run. You're listening on the computer. So I mean, a short run for us is like 30 cases. And a regular run for us is like 60 to 80 cases. So we're kind of sneaking these in and testing the market and kind of using some of the labels we have and giving people something new. And by the time production's done with this, I'm going to release a oatmeal stout in cans. So we're real excited for that. The Imperial Stout's in the 22-ounce bottles, but those are our options coming up here.
Very cool. Now, here's a question. I don't know how we've gone this long without having it answered, but I have never been explained the difference between an IPA and a pale ale. Can you break that down for us and tell us sort of why those two are separate in style?
Yeah, it's, it starts from the original pale ale. So when India was a colony, the India Pale Ale. It was India, India, they were sending beer to the troops because they wanted to taste from home. But they kept sending them the traditional beers that they drank at the time, which are low alcohol, quite often live ales, where the beer is lower alcohol. It gets put in the cask, it finishes fermenting, and then goes to India. And because of the low alcohol, they kept opening these kegs of beer, and the beer was bad. So what the brewers did, where they said, well, they knew that hops are a preservative. They put more hops in it, and they boosted the alcohol. So the beer starting to get to India wasn't spoiling. So that made them happy. And for that time, the pale ale wasn't as bitter, it wasn't as hoppy. The hops that we use today didn't exist. These hybridized hops with a big juicy pineapple, citra with its, sort of grapefruity taste, they didn't exist. And depending where you are, the terroir, the hops that they have in New Zealand and Tasmania and Australia a little bit and other places taste very different than hops that they're grown in different places. So that's pretty interesting. But I ramble. Where was I? Was it a good story?
Between hops?
Oh, the IPA, the
IPA.
IPA. So, as I said, I started brewing in the 90s. So different people made their version of IPAs, and there was a brewery that existed on the top of Lake Winnipesaukee. They had an incredible water well. I don't know how many gallons a minute they got, but they bottled water there, and they sold it the whole coast. And right alongside was a small brewery called Castle Springs. And they made a brewery that Mitch Steele wrote in his book about IPAs about the Lucknow IPA. And that was just a great example of the style. It was it was like kind of at the time, take a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, bitter it up more, bring the alcohol content up. And that's what the Pale Ale of the 90s were. And then as more craft breweries opened, people kind of really started throwing in the wingdings. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to throw in this much. And the aromas that we're getting out of the hops these days are just, they're mind blowing. I don't think, if you could write a song and sing all the names of the different hops that exist, friggin' long song. And it would get into numbers, because what they started doing initially is they gave a hop a name. So there's a hop that we use, in the brewery because has a real strong bitterness. It's alliaceous, or a little bit like an onion. It's dank. It's all different things. It's called CTZ, and some people called it Columbus. Some people called it Tomahawk. Some people called it Zeus. And all these different growers like, no, this is Zeus. So it became known as CTZ. And what they started doing after that is just numbering the hops. This hop has a number. You can buy it. We can give it to you in any form. But we're not going to give it a name until people really want it. We may just till this under and not use it ever again. Maybe it isn't disease resistant. It's only good for 2 years, or whatever. So that happened. But to get back to your point, your question was that the pale ale is generally lower alcohol, and the IPA is usually higher alcohol. For a time, it was kind of that 7% range. If it was like 7%, it was a American IPA. If it was less than that, it was a higher alcohol pale ale. We usually kept our pale ales under 6%. So when I was in Wyoming, we made a beer called Custer's Last Ale. And for us, it was, what category was it in? We sent it to the Great American Beer Festival in a different category because we thought it fit the description better. And my point earlier was, over the years, as more breweries have opened and more people have made new beers and new beer styles have come up, the definition of the beer styles that we know have morphed. So say 15 years ago, there wasn't a session IPA, right? 15 years ago, John Kimmick of The Alchemist, he was making a black IPA at the Vermont Pub and Brewery. And they're pretty much credited for the black IPA. But for the black IPA to become a style, that's only been a couple of years that they've seen that. So how bitter it is, the aroma, the general balance, the general color, you know, when we kind of we get a little crazy, create a new style. Sometimes it's a sub style of something, and then sometimes it comes into a style on itself because there's so many entries, you know, because black IPA is probably style now, where when it first came out, it was just probably a sub style, IPA dark or something, you know, with less entries. So did that answer your question? I kind of rambled.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm sure we could go all day talking about all the different variations of IPAs and everything that they're having now.
Yeah.
And but definitely answered my question when it comes to differentiating those two, like the pale ale and the IPA, where the IPA is definitely gonna be more bitter with the higher alcohol.
You know, and for me as a professional brewer, if I really wanted to know, I would get a copy of the Great American Beer Festival, you know, say last year or this year, how they define the different beers. And I think there's super accomplished homebrewers out there that are, you know, hopefully they're not making more than 300 gallons because that's all I make at a time. But, you know, you have access to that as well. At the Brewers Association based in Boulder, you could look into those guidelines and see how the definition has morphed of any style.
And when it comes to actually learning how to brew the beers, did you learn yours starting with home brewing, or did you start with your first job kind of in the brewery and just sort of learn in more of an apprentice style?
Yeah, I was an accomplished all grain brewer that was tired of buying grain 1 pound at a time at the homebrew shops. When I lived in Utah can be quite interesting. There's a real strong counterculture. But when I first got there, homebrewing was illegal, but there were homebrew shops. So you go buy the stuff, but you couldn't legally do it. And then, you know, just while we're talking Utah, when I first got to Utah, all the alcohol was sold in nip bottles. So if you were going to a club, you'd go buy the liquor in nip bottles. I'll have 15 rums, please. And you go and get a Coke at the place and pour it yourself. So laws have morphed just like the recipes have morphed. But we're not in Utah. We are in beautiful Vermont. Lots of maple syrup. Some of us put maple syrup in our beer. Some of us will make the beer and put in maple syrup. Others will take the sap right out of the tree and make a batch of beer of it. Different results, local ingredients, besides hops, which we're seeing, I think, one of the largest. We've got a really large hop farm here in Vermont now, which is cool to see, and more grain being grown. And for me as a brewer, I'd like to use more local grains as well as hops.
You've both been there for a little bit. So Claudia, what is your role there, and what have been like your favorite things that you've done, that your highlights that you guys have done in the past couple of years?
So I think my favorite thing about working at Idletyme, you know, right before COVID, we were doing events. I've always been like a sucker for anything weddings, you know, listening to speeches from parents and, you know, vows to different couples. And I'm always that person that's like in the background, like, this is beautiful, just like crying a lot. So I love seeing, I don't know, I just love celebrating love. And I think it's super cool, you know, event coordinator. I mean, there's a lot of things, technical things that I have to be aware of and responsible for. But at the end of the day, I'm celebrating love and I'm celebrating a good time. And I'm doing it at a great restaurant that serves awesome beer. We definitely have our own style. And, you know, I see people with all sorts of different styles, weddings, rehearsal dinners, corporate dinners, you know, local groups. And hopefully we can get back to that, you know, once COVID subsides and, you know, we get back to some form of normalcy. So I'd say that's my favorite part of the job, is just being with people and being able to experience all the love and excitement. You know, it's a special day or a special evening. And, you know, when people come to me and, you know, they say without you, it wouldn't have been as magical. I mean, that's everything for me, you know. I really enjoy that part of my job, I think, most of all.
Yeah, we've really upped our game in terms of, you know, what we're offering. And one of the things that Claudia brings to the table is she's had a lot of experience in in design. So, when people come in, and she said, made some great posters of what it could look like if you like it, to be very white, this sort of thing with the tables set up, and, both inside and out, we've been able to let people know what we can do. And I definitely enjoy that, and definitely looking forward to a non-COVID time where we're back chatting with people, and we get to chat with people a little bit for sure, but to be able to plan a special event. I think Claudia was saying a lot of her events that were planned for last year just say, we're just going to get married in a year from now, or we're going to move our rehearsal dinner for a year from now. So, we're looking for those to come back, because not only the mountains are beautiful, we love being outside in the summer, and the days are long, and we embrace it.
Just speaking of design, actually, it's a great point. Another favorite part of my job. I went to college for graphic design, and as a millennial, I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be using my degree, but here I am, not only using my degree, but doing other parts of this job that I love, like the event coordinating, like the marketing, being responsible for merchandise and the design of that merchandise and posters for events. It's wild. I got everything I wanted in a job and more. So that's awesome.
Since Claudia's been here, and just having the not only choice, but the colors and good designs on t-shirt, I'm sure we sell a lot more Idletyme wear since she's been here, and she's been given a good budget, and she's really run with it. So it's really fun you see people come in, because it really starts conversations. And if I'm out snow blowing or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the brewer too. They're just like, we'll get back at it. No beer out here. So.
And you're both clearly very passionate about the community, about the restaurant, about the beer. So I'm sure that helps your jobs a lot, and you can really have fun and run with it. And it probably makes it a lot more rewarding as well.
Yeah, we really hope that we have good snow for the time that they race from the top of Mount Mansfield on skinny skis and go all the way to town. It's called the Stowe Derby, and it's generally later in the season. And if we get a spring thaw, it can wash out the trail that's right behind the brewery, which is a walking path in the summer. But we love to be able to root people on and stand within our fenced in area with a beer and just shake the cowbells at them.
Well, this has been a really great conversation, and everyone has heard so much about your beers and a bunch of other things, Vermont and you guys, and it was great to have everybody get to meet you. As we said, we had such a good time up there and can't wait to come back. But if you would like to share where we can find you on social media and online, we will also put all of that information in the description of the podcast.
Awesome. Well, you can find us on Instagram, handle at Idletyme Brewing, and you can find us on Facebook, Idletyme Brewing Company. And then our website is also idletymebrewing.com, and you can access our Instagram and our Facebook from there. Or you can stop it and say hello.
There you go. And you guys make it easy, keep everything the same, but we'll have links down below in the description, so you can head there, whether you're watching this on YouTube or on any of the podcasting apps. It'll be easy to find you guys.
It's awesome. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thank you again. We had a great time. Cheers. Happy New Year.
To a better new year.
Cheers, you guys. Thank you. Be sure to follow us on social at Uncorked Corner and on the blog at uncorkedcorner.com for a taste of more food and beverage content.
And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Thanks for listening.